Hello there, Star Wars fans, and welcome back to another RebelScum.com video. And today, we have something a little bit different. Something from the tabletop gaming scene. So, you might be familiar with a game called Pandemic, which is a pretty popular tabletop game that has now expanded across many genres.
One of the classics.
And its latest expansion is now into Star Wars, and more specifically, Star Wars: The Clone Wars. So, joining me here today is Zachary.
How's it going, guys? So, I'm Zach. I own and run Order 66 Multiverse along with my brother Josh, who you guys know from Rebel Scum. And I'm here today to help you guys learn about Star Wars Pandemic.
So, tell us a little bit about Pandemic. What is the base game like for those who are unfamiliar with Pandemic, so we can kind of know what to expect with Star Wars Pandemic?
So, the original Pandemic system was all about traveling the world as different characters, sort of halting the spread of 4 different diseases. As you go through, you can learn how to cure the diseases, and that's the ultimate goal of the game. Now, where the gamification of it comes in, you don't just move around. The game plays against you. It is entirely co-op. I believe it's up to 4 players. But the goal of the game is to cure the world before the infection spread too fast. You get outbreaks, and then the world just falls into ruins. It's actually really cool.
When did this game come out?
Oh, good lord, a long time ago. I think this was 2009.
2009?
I'm not sure.
Wow.
Too real.
Yeah, that's exactly. It's way too real. A little on the nose.
Well, I was just... That's why I was asking in case it came out in 2020, and then I was like, that's a little...
That'd be hilarious.
That's a little awkward if it did, you know? So, where do the other genres, where this thing crosses over into different themes from different fandoms, such as Star Wars, how does that work for a game like this?
So Pandemic started off as just this disease-centered game. It then expanded into Cthulhu and that mythos, where it started treating cultists, elder gods, the spread of madness as a disease, modeling it with those same game mechanics. Then they decided to go a little bit more RPG with it, with a World of Warcraft Wrath of the Lich King. That's when they sort of started expanding on the characters that you could play, the different items you could get. They started treating armies and stuff like that as this disease mechanic, which is really cool, and it leads directly into how they designed the Clone Wars version.
So is this then the 3rd or 4th iteration of Pandemic, or have there been others in between with that same warlike mechanic?
There's been a few different ones. The main other one that you need to know about is Pandemic Legacy, which was one of the first Legacy games. The Legacy game is one that changes play to play as you unlock new diseases, as you learn more about how the world works. It's actually really cool. You start adding in components playthrough by playthrough, which is something I really hope they start to do with this. We'll see in a little bit when we start breaking this out. The components are really cool. It would be really awesome to see.
Maybe different battle scenarios.
Oh, yeah.
That'd be cool. All right. Well, on to Pandemic Star Wars: The Clone Wars, the newest installment of the Pandemic tabletop game. So this is not an expansion on the original game. This is a whole new skin, a whole new face of Pandemic, and a whole new way to play Pandemic with, well, the Star Wars characters you know and love from the Clone Wars era. So let's go ahead and crack this thing open.
Go for it. So as we're cracking it open, first off, the box is really nicely designed. It's good quality. The box art is awesome. It actually really gives you a good idea of how the game works on the back side.
All right, and now time for the big reveal.
Maybe time for the big reveal.
There we go.
Aha.
All right. First things first, we've got our rule book. And you know how it is with tabletop games. The first step is throw it away. You don't need the rule book. Who needs rules to play a tabletop game? You just take your little guys that are down in here. You make your Star Wars.
You do a
sound
Star
effects. Here, we're gonna have Grievous versus Mace Windu here, and they're fighting on. Well, you can't
Geonosis.
see it, but I had them sitting on Geonosis, so that's where they're fighting today, and we're playing Pandemic. Mace Windu is gonna stop the pandemic of General Grievous. That's how you do a tabletop game, right?
Close enough. You don't actually need to read the rules. There are some fantastic tutorials out there, video tutorials. We might even do one a little bit later, which I think would be really fun. But if you're worried about the amount of rules here, there's only 11 pages to the rulebook. You only need to read like 8. It's very simple, and if you've ever played a Pandemic game before, which some of you may have, the rules are very similar. There's a few pieces that are a little bit different, such as choosing a villain, choosing your character, which you actually do get to choose your character in this, the way that outbreaks and whatnot work. But basic idea is really not hard to learn.
Nice. So, speaking of not hard to learn, how would we just set up a regular game of Star Wars: The Clone Wars Pandemic now that we've got it out of the box?
So let's crack this open. While I'm cracking that open, why don't you start opening these?
So we have different kinds of cards here.
Yep. So
And a board.
the board is actually a really nice chipboard. That's definitely an upgrade from the original version.
What was the original version of the game board?
It was a little bit thinner. It didn't feel as nice. But we'll go ahead and pull that up here for you guys. It is significantly larger than the other game board as well, which I think is a little bit better, especially since we have some larger components involved. We do have droids, we have miniatures as opposed to little pawns and stuff. So the production quality is definitely much higher on this version. I can't say that I'm a huge fan of how they've laid some of these planets out. You can kind of see them here, but that is not lore correct.
No, it's not.
Not even close. Which some other games like Outer Rim, stuff like that, really nailed. So that's a bit of a mispoint, but honestly, for playability, I think that's going to help a lot.
Okay.
You do have some really awesome planets on here: Kashyyyk, Camino, Tatooine. Of course, everything has to have Tatooine.
We've
Utapau.
got Christophsis, Ryloth, let's see, Malastare.
Mustafar.
Yeah.
I don't know
I'm
why
noticing.
Coruscant's all the way at the bottom.
I don't know. Onderon. What I really like about this is I'm seeing a lot of planets that not only take place in the Clone Wars era that we've seen in the Star Wars films, in the Skywalker saga, but we're also seeing a lot of Clone Wars exclusive planets we only got to visit in Clone Wars, like this one, for example. Lola.
Sayu?
Yeah, Lola Sayu. Lola Sayu, that is the planet where the Citadel prison is from the famous Citadel arc where
I didn't know that.
Echo goes missing. We've got Umbra. We've got
Umbara.
Yeah,
Umbara.
Umbara. I don't know why I said Umbra.
Mandalore, Felucia.
Yeah,
Dathomir. I'm excited about Dathomir.
Dathomir's really cool. Yeah, Anaxis. There's a lot of cool planets. They definitely did their research as to not only include the big ones like Tatooine and Geonosis and Utapau and Camino and Naboo, but they went through and actually included planets from the series itself. Based off of the artwork on these planets, they look pretty much like they do in the series or on screen in other appearances as well. And I'm pretty pleased to see that. So, all right, so we've got that.
Before we move on, I do want to point out, this is definitely a Clone Wars era map. You know how you can tell?
How can you tell?
Alderaa's still there.
Alderaan is still there. That's true. Yeah, that is true. Okay, so now that we've got our board set out, I'm noticing stuff around the edges here. So walk me through those.
So first off, I want to point out that the Pandemic series has always been really awesome about having player aids on their boards, on their cards. Everything is very self-explanatory, which is how they can keep their rule book so small, which is really awesome. Over here, you have the threat meter. This is your countdown timer. And you notice Palpatine's down there at the end.
Sure.
If you get down to that space, Palpatine's won. He is the Senate. Everything is gone terrible.
Okay.
Or, if you're an Imperialist, great. So that's your countdown timer over here. Your invasion timer over here sort of shows how quickly the droid menace is spreading, how quickly the Separatists are invading planets.
So the pandemic in this specific game, in the Star Wars: The Clone Wars edition of Pandemic, is the Separatist Alliance, is the pandemic.
Yep.
The battle droids are sweeping across the galaxy. That is the pandemic that is currently spreading.
Yep.
Okay.
So as you're setting up your game, you choose one of 4 villains. The villains are composed of their main card. Here we've got Count Dooku. each villain plays very differently. So that kind of plays into this version of Pandemic is incredibly customizable how you want to play it. You can choose your difficulty level based on how many missions you want to complete. You can choose your difficulty level based on the villain and how they interact with all the other missions and whatnot. I think that's a really neat part. One of the main complaints about the original Pandemic games was finding the planets on the map. Especially with the original version, you at least had your real world geography that you could use to help you out. This one, since you don't know where the planet's supposed to be, they have these really awesome maps on every card that show you where everything's supposed to be. Now, the game recommends that you start with Asajj Ventress as your first one. So we're going to choose her, and we're going to place her right here on the villain sheet.
Okay.
So every villain has their own little deck of cards. The deck of cards start with easy stuff, go into hard stuff. They cycle through during the game, and they really add a lot of that villain flavor to the game. So, for example, Asajj Ventress will go around and hunt you down across the board. Dooku brings both Grievous and Asajj into the game with him, so you have 3 villains to fight instead of the 1. They are all very incredibly flavorful, and Maul is probably my favorite. Maul, you go around and he starts gathering up the criminal underworld and uniting them under his power, which was such a great subplot in the Clone Wars.
So not only does this game play out like a fun tabletop board game, but it also plays out like a lot of the scenarios that play out throughout the plot points of the Clone Wars.
And that's something I really wanted to touch on, is this feels incredibly juicy, meaning the game feels like what it's supposed to feel like.
That's cool.
That's incredibly cool, and it's so hard to do in such an abstract system like this.
Right, because usually when you're playing a tabletop game, especially in a tabletop game involving miniatures, and since we're Star Wars here, we're just going to say for like Legion, for example, usually it's you gather your miniatures, you already know how to play the game, and you're pretty much creating the scenarios on your own.
Yep.
I mean, you can play scenarios based off of scenarios that happen in Clone Wars, for example, because we do have Clone Wars stuff in Legion.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, it's not going to play out like it did on screen.
Exactly. And it's really easy to get divorced from the feel of the game to the dice of the game. It's really easy to get into that mechanical, all right, I roll to hit, I do X amount of damage, the end. This really feels like you're playing through the Clone Wars.
And that's really cool. Okay, so what do we need to do next?
So once we do that, we start looking at the missions. The number of missions is absolutely huge, so it's very varied, and they range from rescuing people on Ryloth to going and collecting Jedi children. It's really well done. Each of these is basically based off an episode of the Clone Wars. So we choose X amount of these based on how difficult you want the game to be when you set them aside. That's your goal for the game. As you complete missions, you get closer and closer to facing off finally with your villain, and then you can win. After we choose missions, we choose our Jedi. And there are 7 Jedi to choose from, including, of course, Ahsoka Tano, Yoda, Anakin, Mace, Luminara, Obi-Wan, Ayla. All of them feel like that character. They all get a free action. You get 4 actions on your turn. So they all get a free action that only they can do that makes them really feel like that character.
So looking at the Jedi one, I'm going to go with Master Yoda. I'm going to pick that for me. So that's the one I'm picking. Who are you picking?
Oh, I got to go with Snips.
You're going with Ahsoka?
I got to go with Ahsoka.
All right, you got Ahsoka.
The people want to see Ahsoka.
But, I mean, of course, like we talked about, we've also got Ayla, Kenobi, Luminara, Mace, and Anakin. And while we have a good amount of options here, we have, 7 Jedi, like we talked about. There's still room for expansion even with this.
Yeah.
I mean, there's only 4 villains here. There's Dooku, there's Grievous, there's Maul, there's Asajj. Yep. And I like how even if you pick one, there's still some crossover mechanics where some of those other villains get pulled in, like we also discussed a moment ago. But there's also room to add other villains like Savage,
Pong
Krell, and Umbara's on the board, so it'd be perfect to have Pong Krell on here. But Savage, Pong Krell, Sidious himself would be a really awesome villain to add to this. Pre Vizsla from the Mandalorian.
Oh yeah, there are Mandalorians in this. If you guys, Cad Bane would be awesome.
Yeah, just to name a few, there are plenty other characters that we could add to this in the future. And by we, I mean, of course, the wonderful company who put this together. I mean, Pandemic can add more to this.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely room for growth here. You get a lot right out of here. I mean, there's a mini for not only every single villain, but there's a mini for every single Jedi that you could possibly play as
more.
well. And yeah, of course. And then there's also all of these Rogers, which dibs. I'm taking these for my Roger.
They're so
army.
cool.
I love them.
So the original Pandemic game, the components were very bland. You had just these little pawns. You had little cubes that that represented the disease spreading. This is so cool to see on the table all together. It's such a good game feel.
Okay, so now that we've picked our little characters, let's see. I've got that for me. So I'm Yoda. You've got Ahsoka.
Yep.
And then we're fighting against Asajj, or we're going to be fighting against Asajj. So there's Asajj. There she is. Okay, now that we've done that, now that we've selected which Jedi we're playing as, what's next?
So each of us gets one of these action cards. Again, this goes into that there are so many game aids to help you remember what to do. You don't even have to look at the rule book for the most part. So each of us gets one of these at random, and that tells us our starting planet. For example, Ahsoka is going to start on Coruscant.
And it looks like Yoda is going to be starting on Christosis.
From there, we get to put out the missions, so we'll do that in a bit.
Okay.
But we also get to show the infestation of the droids.
On those planets?
On different planets. You'll see in just a second. Go ahead and open those up.
The battle droids?
Yep.
Oh, yes. I've been looking forward to that.
I know, right? Look at those little guys.
And there's a bunch of little guys. We've got a Roger here looking to the right, holding his blaster over his left shoulder. We've got a Roger crouched.
There's so many different poses. I was not expecting that.
We've got a Roger just standing, just hold in like a firing position. We've got a Roger kind of looks like he's running and gunning it, where looks like he's running and he's got his blaster held out. Let's see, it's another one of those Rogers. I don't know how many different Rogers are here, but we're gonna find them all.
Well, while you're doing that, I'm gonna look this up real quick.
Sure. We've got a Roger that looks like he's giving some commands. He's pointing. He's holding his blaster up. So far, there's 5 different Roger minis.
It would have been so easy for them to do them all in one pose without any individuality or anything.
Or just, like you mentioned moments ago, like little, just simple pawns.
Yeah.
Just no different minis at all.
And
Nothing unique.
For the price point of the game, this is an astonishing amount of miniatures. Well, so while he's doing that, to begin the game, you choose 2 planets from this planet deck, this invasion deck. Which is going to go here. And I see here Kashyyyk and Utapau. So for the first round of this, you take 3 droids and you put them on each of those planets. Where's Utapau? And again, this is where
Utapau is over here.
This is where that map comes in handy, because each card shows you exactly where on the board they are.
Okay, so it looks like there's only 5 different minis for the battle droids.
3 go on Kashyyyk. So that's the start of the invasion. The second phase, you draw 2 more, and this time you put 2 battle droids on each of these planets. So we've got 2 on Bardata. We've got 2 on Nal Hutta, which that's so cool that they included Nal Hutta.
It was in the Clone Wars.
Exactly.
Which is a good way to include Cad Bane, because Cad Bane got involved. And that's a good way to include Quinlan Vos also.
Yeah. So we do 1 more on Malastare, just 1 this time. And then the last one that you draw is where you put Asajj. So she's actually going to be on Umbara. And that's the first setup of the game. We choose 4 missions on Jedi Knight difficulty. The first one goes on the orange, and the second one goes on the white. They have markers that go with them, so you can remember exactly where you need to be heading to. Just another way that this game really gets very easy to play.
So let's run through the markers real quick. What kind of indicators do we have here? What do they mean? So I've got this blue one here with a little triangle and exclamation point shape on it.
So certain villains have effects that happen every turn. This little blue one, you put on the villain deck just to remind you to activate those effects. Again, that's the game helping you play.
And then we've got this little brown one here with a lightsaber on it.
The brown one features into the solo play variant, which is another really cool feature of this, is you can play this whenever you want. If you want to just learn it so you can teach it, or you want to just experience the Clone Wars for yourself, you can play this with anywhere between 1 and I believe 4 players.
Wonderful.
So this helps you remember which character is active at any given time. We also have these little blue markers. One goes on the invasion track to help you keep track of how many planets you're getting invaded at a time. And the other one goes on the threat track.
And I like how they're translucent as well.
Yes.
So that when you set them on top of these numbered indicators, you don't forget what number you're on. I
Exactly.
mean, with the threat tracker, it's not so hard because it's in numerical order. It starts at 0, it goes through 6, and ends on Sith. But the invasion tracker is not in numerical order. Well, it is and it isn't.
Yep.
It's you have a couple levels of 2, 4 levels of 3, and then a level of 4 at the end. So while they do go in order, there's multiple levels of multiple numbers, which can get confusing if you're not looking right at it and you can't see the number you're on.
Exactly. So the board is now set up for the first turn of play. You know where the droids are, you know where Asajj is, and I absolutely adore these little mission indicators. So you know you have to get to Kashyyyk and you have to get to Dathomir to complete those missions. Now is a really good time to talk about the absence of a certain Cody and Rex.
Yeah, why aren't Cody and Rex included with the people you can play as?
Because they're included in your allies deck.
Okay.
This is by far my favorite mechanic from this entire game. This is something that was notably absent from anything else, and it gives a level of customization and player agency that the other games just didn't have. So as you go through the game...
Other games being Pandemic?
Yeah, the other Pandemic games.
Okay.
As you go through the game, you collect allies, you collect troopers, and that's actually just an action on your turn. So if I was Ahsoka, I could say, all right, I need some allies. I'm going to flip over a card, and that's unfortunate. Get Chancellor Palpatine.
That's funny.
That was hilarious. So Chancellor Palpatine gives me some special abilities that I can use once. That's an ally card. There are other trooper cards and transport cards that you can pull out. So for example, Cody helps you to succeed when you're trying to invade a planet or fight off droids. Echo and Fives will help you on stealth missions. You've got a bunch of different ships in the game that help you get planet to planet, which is really cool. And you've got all sorts of different land vehicles, ATRT, ATT, the LATs, stuff to help you get around on the planets and prevent yourself from taking damage from the droids. So that's like your armor. That's a good point to transition into the health of the game.
Okay.
So as you try to complete missions, I'm just going to put a couple of guys next to Ahsoka here.
Are you just taking all the best guys? I mean, I need
Cody
some good
Waxer
guys.
and the Acclimator. Yeah, here you can have a couple dice.
Oh, okay, cool, thanks. Oh, I'm taking Rex because he's the coolest.
Yep.
I'm gonna take Rex. I'm gonna take. Let's see. I'm gonna go with Echo.
I love that almost every named clone is in there.
Ooh, and I'm gonna go with the Arc 170 because that's my favorite starfighter.
Let me grab one more because there's a mechanic I want to show off.
Okay.
Okay, so I've got the Juggernaut. That's cool. Nothing stops the
Just
Juggernaut.
taking the cool stuff. Always.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's say Ahsoka went over to Kashyyyk, and she's trying to destroy some of the droids there.
Yep.
There's a die in there. Let's go ahead and pull that out. Big chonker of a custom die too.
Not just a die, but we also have some more minis. We have this little arrow.
The tracker goes on Maul.
Piece.
It helps you to track how strong his criminal network is.
Oh, okay. And then we also have these little Lucre Hulk cruisers.
Is that really their name?
The Lucre Hulk, yeah.
Wild.
Yep, the Lucrehulk Trade Federation cruiser.
So those actually, if you're familiar with the original Pandemic games, those take the place of the outbreaks. So if you ever at any point were to place an extra droid on a planet that already had 3, you would instead place a blockade, which makes it way harder to complete missions.
Got you. Okay, so here's the big die we were talking about.
So there's a couple different symbols on there. There's success symbols, which are these little stars that almost look like the Jedi symbol. And there's these little hit indicators that look kind of like the X-Wing hit indicators. You roll it, and you would say, okay, I've got 1 success. I can take off 1 droid. If you were to roll one of these little hit indicators, the droids would do some damage back to Ahsoka. I can either tap one of my armors, or I can destroy one of my guys. So the Jedi don't ever die, but their clones do, which is really unfortunate.
Well, I mean, that happens throughout the series, so...
Yes, it does. Sorry, Waxer.
Oh, Waxer's gone. That
I wasn't about to drop Cody.
Boyle's going to be real sad.
So go ahead and give that a try.
Okay,
let's put Yoda over here with
We're
Utapau.
going to Utapau. We're going to take Grievous out if we're going to Utapau. He doesn't stand a chance against Yoda.
I wonder if the bongo's in here.
Let's see. I got 2 success and a hit.
So you would remove 2 droids.
Okay.
And Yoda would have to lose a clone.
Well, it's obviously going to be Echo. He goes missing anyway.
Yes, he does.
No.
So that's the main mechanic of the game. As you go through and try to complete missions, you need a certain number of successes. You can add to those successes by using certain types of assets, so clones or vehicles or anything like that. You tap them to add to the number of successes. It's that simple.
Well, guys, we hope that this has sparked some interest into Star Wars: The Clone Wars, brought to you by A Pandemic Systems. They have a lot of cool board games out there right now with varying flavors, as you can see, and Star Wars is that newest flavor. And honestly, I'm really excited to get started in playing. Stay tuned for a possible playthrough video of this game where maybe some of us will sit down and actually record a session of us playing through just so you can actually see the mechanics, how they actually play out. And stay tuned for more tabletop awesomeness, as tabletop gaming is also a big and integral part of Star Wars fans. So there's a lot of Star Wars fans out there who are very avid tabletop collectors and players out there. I mean, just look at games like Legion, for example, or X-Wing miniatures.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of
Assault.
Yeah, there is a lot of collectability within those in themselves. Plus, there's also nothing from saying you can't just use your own game pieces. You know, use your favorite 3 3/4 scale Asajj Ventress, or use your favorite VC Ahsoka for this.
Yeah. Plus, all of these miniatures are very highly detailed, way more than I thought that they would be, and very paintable if you're into that side of the hobby.
They are also very paintable. They're just, I would say, maybe slightly smaller than Legion models.
Yeah.
They're really close to Legion. The battle droids are also incredibly tiny, but you can just, do a quick coat of beige paint. Honestly, I think they maybe should have made the Separatist minis all beige instead, since
I don't know
battle
why they
droids
did
are
that.
traditionally beige. I get the blue color, though, because it is the Separatist Alliance blue, so
That's true.
that does make sense. But, I mean, our battle droids, come on, battle droids are beige. They're traditionally beige. They should have been beige.
But you can change that.
You
That's
can
the whole
change
point.
that, and that's really cool. You can also, since you have different poses, like you could easily take this pointing gesture Roger here, who looks like he might be an officer, and paint him officer colors. They're small minis, but it is possible to get at least the basic level of paint details you would need to distinguish them if that's something you want to do.
Yeah.
This is highly customizable, and I can't wait to see what kind of expansions they add, because like we said earlier, there is a lot of room to grow here.
Now that's we only talked about the Clone Wars era. How cool would it be to be a First Order commander going through and getting rid of the Resistance? How cool would it be to be...
Or vice versa. The Resistance trying to push out the First Order. The First Order spreading across the galaxy could be the Pandemic.
Or Palpatine crushing the Rebellion.
The Rebellion I would
That'd be so
definitely
cool.
say should be the Pandemic side
Exactly.
of the original trilogy era, where your villains or your heroes, depending on how you view them, you're fighting against Han Solo. Han Solo's, spreading his smuggling and whatever across the galaxy. You've got Luke Skywalker just destroying Imperial installations, and you got to put a stop to it.
Yep.
There's a lot more flavors that can come from Star Wars with a pandemic system. So, pandemic, you might want to look at some of those other eras. I definitely think the Clone Wars era was a good start.
Yes.
I think battle droids were perfect. Honestly, when we first heard about this, when we were first approached about looking at this game, and the title was Pandemic, I hadn't heard of it before because I don't do a whole lot of tabletop gaming. I dabble a little bit here and there, but I wasn't familiar with it, so I just assumed, oh, so it's Blue Shadow Virus. Obviously, because it's, Clone Wars and it's Pandemic. It's obviously the Blue Shadow Virus. That was not the case. But that is something that is maybe even a scenario possibly already preloaded in here. I wouldn't be surprised if it was.
We're going to have to take a look.
Or something that could be added as an expansion later on. Plus, with other eras of Star Wars, there's other things you could add to it too. We could even dip in a little bit to Legends and do real Death Troopers. Or the Rakghoul Plague from the Old Republic era. Again, lots of opportunity for growth here and lots of room for additions to a Star Wars A Pandemic system. Whether it be in the Clone Wars era or move into other eras, there is plenty of room to grow here.
There's one more thing I wanted to touch on right before we go, which is this is a perfect family game. The difficulty on it is incredibly variable, so you can have it very easy for small children. It's completely cooperative, so it's your family against the game, so there's no competitive nonsense there.
No kids getting disheartened or
no table flipping.
No table flipping or anything. Okay.
Yeah. And how cool is it for a kid to say, all right, I'm Anakin, I'm going to go slice up some battle droids and not younglings?
Well, I mean, they probably had it coming. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for tuning into today. Like I said, stay tuned for some potential gameplay content of this and more tabletop content here on rebelscum.com. Make sure you like and subscribe, follow us on social media, and stay tuned for more. And check out some of the other content we do because there's something new every single day on rebelscum.com. Go to rebelscumshop.com for some awesome swag and merch like the Supreme Leader shirt I'm wearing today. It's one of my absolute favorite Rebel Scum shirts. Actually, this is my favorite Rebel Scum shirt.
Yeah, no, Ahsoka.
No.
Or the Vader.
I'm biased. I helped design this one. I was like, oh, let's do Supreme.
Well, so what?
That's
it's not
easy.
Unpunched?
Well,
You helped design that one too.
Yeah, Unpunched was fun. Unpunched was fun. That's an older one, but yeah, no, the Supreme Leader one's my favorite. Plus, again, First Order. I dig the First Order. Yeah, exactly. First Order is awesome. We'll see you guys later. We'll see you another time. And as always, may the Force be with all of you.